my good friend Rich. What's up, brother? You're definitely my most regular guest, which I think we should just start a show together. You and I should we should start our own weekly show because it's way
Yes.
easier to have the scheduled guests and stuff. Just like you and I do it, and we catch up, and it's a lot more fun.
If that's the only way that I'm going to get a chance to catch up with you on a weekly basis, I am down.
It's tough, man. I feel so terrible because it's ruined like my ability to stay on a schedule just because there's so many like being, a new parent, there's all these uncertainties. Like today he's having a complete meltdown. I think his stomach doesn't feel well and stuff. So we have him upstairs cause he's really not feeling well. And he's like been screaming all day and I feel terrible. So I'm glad we're at least able to catch up, but there's been so many things, so many news events and big stories and big changes the last few weeks, last few months. And I know we have a short period of time. I know we want to talk about some other cool stuff towards the end, but I wanted to dive in here. Let's start with, cause you got me thinking that you're part of Wall Street Bets when you actually said that, and I actually believed you. What do you think about, cause I know this podcast is not just about marketing. It's Unicorn Perspective is about people that are market leaders, thought leaders at a high level business wise, and investing is a big part of building wealth, becoming successful. What do you think about what's going on? Just high level, and then we can dive in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as someone who has a bunch of money in a bunch of different hedge funds, that has done extremely well, like much more outperforming the market. I see that side, but I do think what insiders on Wall Street can do is unfair. I think it's totally absurd that a company can be short sold 140% of the outside, of the available stock. And I don't see any difference between, 3,000 Reddit users collectively coming together and all doing the same thing as 3,000 investors giving money to a hedge fund to do it all by themselves. I see it as the same exact thing, and I don't see it as any more or less. What I really spooks the crap out of me is what Google did with Robinhood. What Robinhood did, and that's Robinhood is still outside really what I focus on mostly. But what Google did to me is just more of the same of what is going on with big tech censorship everywhere, right? And I haven't really dove into what DeSantis, the governor of Florida, what I just saw like a 3-minute clip of him kind of talking about that as a state, Florida is going to go after big tech. But it's certainly the right approach. They have way too much power. That was part of the whole CSIB thing that we did. What are your thoughts?
I agree 100%. I think you can't have both ways, right? So you can't spend decades as these big hedge funds putting together massive presentations, big public displays of like, Bill Ackman, like Herbalife, going on the road and basically pitching everybody with money that this is a fraud. This is a fraud. Here's all the reasons why you should short it, why you should sell it. And then when people in a Reddit group say like, we need to, buy GameStop's going to the moon. Like you can't say it's right to do it one way and it's wrong to do it the other way, right? It has to be even playing field there. I think what is interesting, go back to what you said, is the concept of being able to, I can borrow GameStop stock from you, and then I can then re-loan the stock that I'm already borrowing to somebody else, which is how basically stock can have 140% of its outstanding shares shorted, is insane. Like Elon Musk did a tweet saying you can't sell a house you don't own. You can't sell a car you don't own. You can't just like go out there and say this townhome over here, I want to sell it. I don't own it. I have no interest in it, but I'm going to sell it to this person over here. Like you can't do that, right?
Right.
So it is interesting. I think shorting stocks used to have a purpose. So like back in the Enron days, I saw some articles about like early short sellers who were basically like the police. They found like fraud and they warned everybody. And you can make, if you make money, but you also did a lot of good for the market, I think that's fine. I think what's happening now is like hedge funds realizing they have enough influence and power that they can basically cause a stock price to drop by saying it's a fraud, whether it's a fraud or not. And then there's no penalty if it comes out that, hey, it actually wasn't a fraud, but we said for, 2 years that it was, and we made, billions of dollars. It is interesting. I think it is it is crazy to think that for market cycle after market cycle, boom, bust, where every time there's a bust, usually, Main Street just gets totally screwed. And usually
Right.
Wall Street and the big money guys get bailed out. As soon as like Main Street makes a little bit of money, right? Nobody made a ton. Like a few people probably made big money, but a lot of people made a little bit of
Right.
money. Now there's hearings on regulation. There's going to be, the government's getting involved. Janet Yellen's getting involved, who happens to also be a high paid consultant
Right.
by Citadel, right? Citadel for a decade's been
Right.
paying her. Like, it's crazy. And it goes to like the big tech stuff. Like, I think it's gotten to a point where a lot of these companies are so big and so powerful, and they've gotten away with stuff for so long that they're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's like, we just are untouchable. We know nobody's gonna do anything to us. We're not even gonna try to we used to try to, pretend that we weren't screwing people over, that we weren't breaking the law, or at least operating in a very gray area. And now I feel like it's just, we're too big. You can't do anything to us. Like, good luck. And that's kind of terrifying to me.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you. Or I don't know if I don't disagree, but I just don't know. Like I my I think from like their warped perspectives, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. I think that and it just seems so shocking to me because I think that no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, like if you're intelligent, you know history, and history kind of predicts the future. And whenever the masses feel like they don't have a voice, whenever there's a wider and wider spread between the haves and the have-nots, generally like revolutions happen. And it seems almost like that's where we're headed. And everything that can be done to accelerate it seems to be being done. And everything that is like potentially would cause some friction in getting there is being undone. And I don't really understand conceptually why, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Why would Google remove those 100,000 like negative comments? Like it's not like nobody knows, right?
Or that they're unwarranted. I would get it if Robinhood did nothing wrong and
right.
there was just an attack on Robinhood, right? Like people just all of a sudden went and said like, we just don't like the company for whatever reason, but they really haven't done anything wrong. And so we're going to go review bomb them. Like the people, they have millions and millions and millions of users. The people who commented 1 star, like had a genuine reason to say 1 star, which is that it's scary to know that I can put all my money here and buy a lot of stock. And then when the stock starts going really high, all I can do is sell it and they'll prevent me from buying it, regardless of whether that was justified or not, whether it was really truly just like a capital issue. There was too much volatility. They needed more reserves, or whether Citadel had an influence. Regardless, like that's a valid concern that justifies a 1-star review. And it is crazy that Google can just protect them and say, hey, we're just going to keep your 5-star review perfect and pretty. And remove every 1-star review. Like, yeah, that's crazy.
To me, it's so problematic because like, no matter what the reason, like I maybe there is a precedent for that, but I don't know of it. I don't know of Google doing that for any other company for any other reason. And if that
not on that scale, I haven't heard.
Yeah. And so like, why would they not just be like, we got to sit this out? I don't understand. Like, it seems like it's like pouring salt in a wound to me.
And that is the problem. So that gets back to what you were saying before, which it seems like in the last year or two, just to kind of reword what you said,
right?
It's every bad thing that could be happening to move us further to unrest and divide is happening, like macro level, like just things out of our control. But then every company, institution that has the ability to kind of make things better is choosing the exact opposite thing to do. And that's what's pretty crazy here. It seems like every time one of these big tech companies over the last year has had a choice to like, okay, let's keep out of this and let things just naturally die down, or let's jump in, get involved and fan the flames of divide, they're jumping in at an unprecedented rate, right? Like starting with what happened with Trump being deplatformed and then Parler being removed as a business. You now have these companies that are all just like saying, we now, for whatever reason, feel like we have an obligation as private companies to enforce our viewpoints. by
Yeah.
like not providing services to companies. And that's pissing off a lot of people. And what I don't think people understand is this is not just like a far left, far right thing anymore. I think what's happening, you have a lot of people in the middle. Like I consider myself in the middle. I'm
Yeah.
not registered either way. I really don't like a lot of things on the Republican side. I don't like a lot of things on the Democratic side. But what I'm seeing, it's pissing me off, and it's clearly one sided, and it's making me be like, at some point, you're pushing people to pick a side. By what's happening right now, you're forcing people to choose sides. It's hard to stay in the middle anymore, and that's really terrifying. Where you can't have neutral parties that are kind of like, hey, I agree on some stuff, disagree on some stuff. Let's have a rational discussion. It's like all in over here, all in over here.
I just like, I just can't imagine. Yeah, it angers me too, right? But like, what do you and I have to be angry about? Very little,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Like, we're pretty fortunate and we're blessed. And I don't say that like from a standpoint, it's just, but I'm still angry, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's my point, is that I'm still angry. And I am not like one of the 12,000 people that just lost their job because of the Keystone pipeline. Right. I am not someone whose business went into the shitter and is still in the shitter because like California hasn't opened up and I'm in California. Right. Because I'm in Florida. But like, so I just don't know it seems to me like the likelihood of some people being pushed past the breaking point to be like, screw it. Some like my life is over. I am going to take some other people down with me who I feel are responsible for my life being over. I don't see how that doesn't happen. Like,
I
I
agree.
think like we're in a ticking time bomb. And it just seems like everything that can be done to instigate is being done. And I don't understand. It's like they want it to happen.
Yeah, because this
And I
should have been
don't
a
get
win. Like this should have been if
it.
you're in power right now, if you're in the
Mhm.
media, you're in the government, and you see what's happening with this game, like use the GameStop thing for example,
Right.
you should be like, let them have it. Right? These are people they bet their stimulus checks on GameStop stock. Like people that are unemployed, living at home, they gotta win. Right? Like I hear stories all the people that put their
Yeah.
stimulus check, they made $30,000, they made $40,000, they can pay off their student loan debt. Like you're hearing stories like this left and right. But now it's like, now we got to fuck you over. It's like now, hey, actually, we're going to lock up your ability to sell that stock. We're going to lock up your ability to buy that. Like, and you wonder why people get pissed off. It's like, I just got a break. I got lucky, like totally lucky fluke thing
Correct.
that I happened to own GameStop or AMC. This one break I got after a year and a half of shit, right? And now Wall Street and DC are getting involved, and they want to prevent this from happening. And it's these are all like Reddit bros, and we should, they're gaming the system, they're manipulating the stock market, and it's dangerous and stuff. It's like it would have been very easy to say to do what Cuban and a lot of people have been doing, which is nice job, like good
Yeah.
job, guys. Like there's a lot of risk there, and a lot of you might get burned, but for the ones that made money, congratulations, that's a win. Great job, you made some money, be happy. Little win, right? People need wins.
I agree. But the big tech side though just is, I don't know where it goes, but it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere good.
It
It doesn't
doesn't.
go
It
anywhere
has
good.
to be. And my viewpoint has been that when you talk First Amendment, right, it's clearly does not protect you from private companies, right? It was clearly the language is protect you from the government. I think the issue though is that if you're like, there's people that are like lawyers, constitutional lawyers. There's contextualists and originalists, people that
Right.
read the Constitution as it was written, and people that interpret it in modern times.
Mhm.
I think if you had the founding fathers in 2021 and they were drafting, the Constitution, and then you had the amendments, and the leaders of our country early on, and they saw how people communicated today, I feel really confident. Obviously, it's an assumption that they would lump Facebook and Twitter into that because those are the town squares. That's where all communication happens, right? Nobody goes outside and talks in a town square anymore to get to people. You can only have a voice on these platforms. And so, in a way, if you're deplatformed, if you're removed from all the social media platforms,
Yeah, you're
your
invisible.
voice, you're invisible. You have a
Yeah.
voice technically, but your ability to have reach and influence is gone.
And I wasn't against this. So I bring this up not because but like all of a sudden we have a problem regulating like private business? Like, what about bakeries that don't want to make cakes for gay marriages? Like that, we stepped in and we said, no, that's discrimination. Are we not discriminating against half the country right now? Like with their opinion and everything else. And like, yeah, they're private businesses, but they're private businesses, to your point, that are town squares. Certainly, like no bakery has a monopoly on making cakes. And I have no problem saying that, gay rights should be honored. And yeah, like you should
100%.
make like cake for anyone. And Twitter and Facebook and Google should also like follow the same logic. And yeah, I guess at some point, the Republicans, if they ever win Congress, maybe they got to add to civil rights your political views. Because then all of a sudden, all this would be seen as discrimination. And I don't want to be on a right-wing website any more than I want to be on a left-wing website. Like I'm not looking to be on either.
I think where it gets frustrated, I think where people get frustrated too, and I can see this viewpoint is that, okay, so you said years ago, right? Twitter and Facebook said, hey, your viewpoints essentially aren't welcome on our platform, but nobody's stopping you from going and making your own Twitter, right? Which is essentially what Parler did, right? Parler went out and said, okay, we'll go start our own company, and our company will have different rules than your company. But then even then it said, well, actually, I know we said that a few years ago, but it's still too extreme, even though we don't own your company, we have no control of your company, but we're going to shut you down anyway. And we're going to use a standard that isn't applied universally. And I think, again, you go back to just the tipping point. What bothers me the most about this is not so much the decisions being made individually. It's the fact that they're not being made consistently. I think that's what pisses people off. So if your argument, if your line in the sand for Amazon, for example, to remove somebody from AWS is that you have to essentially, like, anybody that uses your platform to coordinate a crime, facilitate a crime, communicate, like hate speech, whatever it might be, that is grounds for removing you. Then you need to apply that to everybody, because they came out that Facebook had way more on it, and it took longer. Like, they still had stuff up on Facebook after they took Parler down. So you can't have, like, Facebook is safe because they're too big, even though they do the same stuff. But Parler, because you're not big enough and you're right leaning, we're gonna take you down as a company.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would put Twitter in that same boat. Like, they certainly have had a lot of stuff engineered on Twitter. I would say Gmail probably has exponentially more. Should we shut down Gmail? Like, how many drugs crimes have been organized through Gmail? I'm sure a ridiculous amount, right? Yeah. Like Signal, Telegram, should those be turned off too? Like, it doesn't end, right? Like, so I just see, it seems all very, I don't know. It just seems like it's, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know how to make sense of all this without thinking that somebody wants something to happen, because it just seems like it's insane.
And it's being pushed very far right now. So now what scares me is that it has momentum, meaning that there's been some big accomplishments. If you're on the side that wants to truly destroy the other side's viewpoint, and listen, like, I don't agree with a lot of, conservative viewpoints. I don't agree with a lot of liberal viewpoints, but I also respect the fact that you can have those viewpoints. So it's like, now they're arguing on MSNBC and CNN. If you watch some of the recent, shows, that like Comcast should remove Fox News from cable. And it's crazy, because if you read like Matt Taibbi's book, Hate Inc., and you read these books from like insiders, they're all playing the same game. You can't say that you're not playing the same game when MSNBC at the end of 2020 had actually, every day more mentions of Trump than Fox News. New York Times, record subscriptions in 2020. Right. You profited off this guy for 4 years. You used him to make as much money as possible. And you've all said plenty of lies. You're not journalists. You're all entertainment networks. You all are opinion pieces. Like, and Fox News is that way. I agree. CNN's that way. I mean, they're all the same. So you can't say, hey, remove, because we're in power now and we have momentum. You know what? I think Fox News just shouldn't exist, have no distribution. It's insane. Nobody, like, it's unfathomable to think that's even being floated, let alone floated like on mainstream TV now. Like that's a normal view right now in America, is that like Fox News and any Republican show, newspaper, magazine, blog should be essentially removed from existence. And that should terrify everybody, not just Republicans. That should terrify Democrats, because if that can be done now, it sets precedent. So if Republicans get in power, guess what they're doing, bud? They're coming for you, and they're going to shut every show down, and they're going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, and that's like that's my point to what I was saying earlier, right? Like, so I'm Jewish, right? And as a Jew, like I totally respect the right of other people like saying like the Holocaust didn't exist, even though like most of my grandparents, brothers and sisters, everybody got killed, right? And but the whole idea of like remember the Holocaust, right? It's not about like it's about as a historical thing, recognizing like what led to that, not the 6 million people died, although that's a tragedy and a horror show. It's really about what led to that. And what led to it was a lot of suppression, a lot of like what we're starting to see now. And it's just like, that's the part, right? Like when, and I don't, it's, yeah, it's just pretty heinous. And personally, I think even trying to change history, which is what it seems like people are trying to do now, even with Trump, it just seems totally absurd to me, right? And I'm never going to remember whatever the date was, January 6th or what, like to equate that with 9/11 is absurd. Like it's absurd. It like it literally is absurd. And I like 3,000 people died. Like there was an attack on our country. This was something very different from that. And yeah, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. And I hope there is a day where big tech pays a price for it. That's like, I just hope that, I don't know what that looks like. I don't think it's going to happen because there's too many Facebook and Google executives tied into the Biden organization. So I don't think it's going to happen in this next 4 years. Maybe like Elizabeth Warren will still stay strong, like against it. I hope, because I just don't know, like, where's it going to come from?
Which is crazy. Like the fact that you said that, because I like if you had told me that a year ago, let alone 2 or 3 years ago, that I would be kind of rooting for Elizabeth Warren, who like I think is just crazy anti-capitalist and regulation. Like, but honestly, I mean, Amy Klobuchar just came out with a big sweeping proposal today about antitrust. They're gonna move forward with. Like at this point, you're choosing the lesser of two evils. I think they're both evil. They both have the ability to harm our population, but I think big tech has shown that they can have way more of an impact and way more of a consequence on us as individuals than regulation put in place on big companies could from the government. Again, like who knows? It could could turn out to be worse, but like right now it's somebody's gotta. There needs to be a swift kick. Like somebody needs to, one of these companies needs to get hit really, really hard with just a massive fine. Like what happened to like Raging Bull, right? Like they got fined so much to put them out of business. Like something like that needs to happen where it's like, it's a $500 billion fine or something that's just like crazy that happens where it's like, oh shit, like nobody's too big. Like this is going to be real bad. But we'll see. I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? And I just don't, yeah, I don't like what's going on, but I don't know, like, other than to say that, like, and feel somewhat scared to, like, talk too much about it because I don't want my business to be hurt by big tech, and I don't want half the world to see me as a well, excuse the language, but to see me as an extreme, like, person because I don't feel I am, but certainly some of my opinions would make me seem extreme, I guess, like, to the other side.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. It's totally crazy. And I posted one thing when Trump went after big tech, like early, like about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And God, it like totally went kind of berserk. And I was like, I did a, you know, I did a live stream on this, and I also praised Elizabeth Warren on that live stream as well. It's not a, it's not a right or left thing. It's a U.S. thing, and we've got a problem with big tech,
Yeah.
and they're just getting
It's
bigger and
wild.
bigger,
Yeah. So,
and they're
yeah.
taking over more and more of our lives, which is kind of a challenge. But on the other hand, if they didn't aggregate these audiences, you and I wouldn't have the business. So
It's true. I think that it's, looking at the positive side of it, right? There still are tremendous opportunities. I think anytime that there are massive changes, right, like we're seeing right now, whether it's iOS
right,
14, whether it's in increased regulation, whether it's volatility in the stock market, people make money, right? People make money in bear markets, make money in bull markets. People that get greedy get slaughtered. That's the famous
right,
saying, pigs get slaughtered. And so, like, that's why I'm always excited when we talk, because you have such a rich network of like the who's who of the smartest people in the world who don't just teach marketing and business and like investing, all that stuff, but they actually do it on a regular basis. And so I wanted to like pivot to that and talk a little bit about like Steal Our Winners and the Coalition to Save Internet Businesses and everything that we did last in the live stream, because I think it's so important now more than ever to have guidance, right? Like a lot of people are
right.
lost right now. They need guidance and they're struggling with who do I turn to, and the options right now is like I got to pick one individual and buy their course. It's a big risk. It's like one person, hopefully they're legit. But what you're doing, which is really cool, but also very, very difficult to do because you need to have a massive network,
Yeah.
is why pick one person when I can bring in like 50 people and every month talk to, 5 or 8 of them. And then they share the coolest thing they're doing right now that nobody knows about. And you get that kind of insider look, that early access, which is super cool. So I want to like, let's talk about that. Like what's going on there.
Yeah, well, and it's also like so we launched Steal Our Winners with this 24-hour live stream, right? The council or committee got thrown back and forth to save internet business, CSIB, and we just launched it in Italy. Like, we just launched it this month. We're launching it in Italy. It's in we it's in Japan. It's been in Japan for about 6 months, and it's been here in the U.S. now for 12 months. And I think next month we're launching in Brazil. And, because it's the same everywhere, that big tech can be leveraged, but they're not our friend. And it's clear that they're not our friend when you look at certain stats. And like the stat that really kind of woke me up to it more than anything else was when Google passed the threshold of more than 50% of the search traffic not leaving Google, because that really violates the whole. I mean, every big tech company has violated stuff. Facebook was inviting every business to get all their customers and all their advertising to point to Facebook, because then you'd be able to talk to your customers forever. And then they changed the rules about who shows up in the newsfeed. So after we sent, that happens, right? But like with search, the whole concept of search was like, we're going to scrape your sites, take all your content, but that's so that people can find your content and be sent there. It doesn't work if it's like, hey, I'm going to scrape all your content, and half of the visitors that it generates, I'm keeping for myself. And, some of the visitors you'll get, and it's only half right now, it might be 80% I'm going to keep for myself next year. It just doesn't seem to work. So for people who are not aware, that last January in 2020 or December of 2019, somewhere around there, Google surpassed where 50% of the searches do not leave Google properties after they do a search. And that just seems inherently unfair. And so that's why we launched it. And there are lots of strategies that can be done to bypass or at least mitigate damages from big tech, right? So there are those that most people don't know, right? Like things that you take for granted that now, because I'm friends with people like you, I know myself, but didn't know beforehand, like the idea of having a pristine account where all your audiences are, so that you can never lose access to your audiences in like a Facebook ads account, right? Like, so I didn't know that. Lots of people don't know that. And when they lose their Facebook account, they lose all their audiences. But if they knew that, they wouldn't lose their audiences. And I'm sure if you're a really big company, Facebook makes sure that you get your audiences and you don't lose your audiences, even if they have to ban an account. But we don't get that treatment. We just launched something as like another concept that we covered in, because I know we covered that in Steal Our Winners. We covered in Steal Our Winners another thing where Jeremy Blossom laid out this CoReg process, right? Because there's no point, right, for lots of companies to pay Google for the same lead. So we just, that was a strategy that Jeremy laid out. And then Jeremy and I just started doing it where we're running traffic to Steal Our Winners and traffic and funnels and Todd Brown, marketing funnel automation, and Groove from Mike Filsain, and Ryan Levesque, Ask. And I think the Morrisons, I'm not sure if they're in, but like we're all now spreading the cost of those leads, amongst each other. Yeah. So we're giving Google less, right? One of us is paying Google instead of 6 of us, right? And so there's strategies like that. But like in the grander scheme of things, and I'm sure you've kind of experienced this yourself countless times, the whole concept at the end of the day with marketing strategies online is when they're new, they work exceptionally well. When they start getting older and everyone has seen them before, they become less effective. So, we were talking offline about it, that like when I brought the VSL to Agora that John Benson invented, and I saw like, luckily, like within a week of when he put it out, I brought it to Agora. Like Agora grew by 400% that year because conversion rates went up 400%. But today, when we test a VSL versus a regular sales letter, sometimes a sales letter wins, sometimes a VSL wins. The difference is de minimis. But if you got on VSLs early, you saw your business grow, you saw your customer list grow. It was so effective that we could run a 60-second spot on Fox News advertising the VSL, which was a 70-minute VSL, and we could still acquire customers like profitably at that, right? Like 60 seconds on Fox, sending them to a 70-minute VSL, and it was still effective, right? Like that would not work today at all. And when I invented the automated webinar, same thing. And so, we gave it to Filson, gave it to Brunson, and they crushed it, and I was crushing it, but we wouldn't crush it today. And so the idea of plugging into marketers and entrepreneurs who have figured something out right now, that they're crushing it right now, and getting them to share it with others, that's not easy to do. But getting those strategies is the fastest way to really grow your business, grow your profits, grow your marketing, et cetera, because those strategies are the competitive advantage online.
Yeah, it's what's crazy is, like you said, it's the top guys don't usually like to share their secret sauce. And you've been able to develop this really special relationship, this network that's both wide and deep, which is unusual, and get like the top guys and women in the world to just like open up and say like, hey, I have a really cool new strategy. I could either selfishly keep it to myself for the next year or two and milk it for all it's worth, or I could share it with, Steal Our Winners through Rich and let, hundreds or thousands of other people leverage it. And yeah, it might decrease the value of it quicker, but it's going to help a lot of people. And I think it's really special and really unique, which is also why I think there's nothing like it out there, right? And that's hard to say in the info product space in our industry, that it's a truly unique product. I don't think there's a lot of courses, there's a lot of group coaching, there's a lot of masterminds, there's a lot of everything else, but like this unique kind of newsletter model where it's multiple experts each month sharing top tips, behind the scenes look is just awesome. Like it's one of the coolest things.
Yeah, and I think they like the way Matt, who's like, who runs the day-to-day of Strategic Profits, I think he was more involved in this because I certainly wasn't. But he positioned it as a virtual mastermind.
Yep.
And in a way, it is from the standpoint that the most exciting part of a mastermind is finding out what everyone, like what's working. And that's exactly what this is every month, but from people who you want to know, like if they've figured out something new. And it's actually cool is that what I'm really excited about is we're starting, and I wouldn't say that it's the majority because it isn't, but we're starting to get people who are completely unknown, like they're just like heavyweights in their own business and whatever, but have figured something out and are willing to share it. And those kind of strategies, like if they're not shared, they might not ever be known by anyone. Right.
Yeah.
So like we had this one this past month with Walter Baruch, who figured something out about YouTube that was like really kind of very interesting because he spent $500,000 to test different stuff to see what would work. And yeah, that kind of stuff like is just, it's invaluable because most people don't have the $500,000 to test and they don't have Walter's knowledge and background to know what to test, right? Or like when you shared the story of how you took the Onnit acquisition for Alpha Brain down from like 130 or 113 or whatever it was down to $12 to $13. Like before I heard what you did to do that, like I was completely unaware of those strategies.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's like what you take for granted, what I take for granted, that really makes campaigns work for us in our different areas of expertise most people don't know about, and they pay a price daily because they don't know about it.
Yeah, that's the way, is like reframing the way you think about things. I think a lot of people look at, hey, this program costs X, and they view it purely as an expense or a cost instead of, hey, I'm losing Y every day because I'm doing these things wrong. And for me, at least, like once I started investing in myself years ago, and it took me a long time. For years, I tried to just cheap it out and like, I'm not going to invest in mastermind or courses or trainings. I lost I mean, like the amount of money I lost and the amount of time I lost because I didn't do some really simple things that I could have figured out if I just like joined somebody's program is crazy in hindsight. And that's what's like, I think everyone needs to view any type of investment in education or training or coaching as, right? It's like, hey, whether it's $97, $9,000, it's shrinking the length of time it takes to get from A to Z. I'm mitigating the amount of mistakes I'm going to make. I'm decreasing the amount of money I'm going to lose along the way. And time is way more valuable. Plus, the other thing I'll say here is like, courses are great, right? Like I've done courses in the past. The problem though is a lot of it can be fluff, right? A lot of it, it's like you need to put out a course that feels like it's worth it, right? So it's got to be 40 hours of videos,
Right.
Like, do you have time to sit through 40 hours of courses? Like most people don't. Whereas like what you do every month is you distill a really actionable strategy in a 30 to 60 minute window. So like if I'm a busy entrepreneur, busy marketer, like I just want that stuff, right? I want the gold. I don't want all the fluff. I want, 5 videos a month or whatever it is with a 30 to 60 minute clip that I can watch really quickly. And I have an actionable tactic. Maybe 2 are relevant, maybe 3 aren't, but the 2 that are relevant, that's going to move the needle for me each month. And
Yeah. And, and what we
exciting.
do is, yeah, you keep lowering the number, but it's 8 to 12. And
8 to 12.
I want to move it back
I'm
to
lowering the
12.
bar so you can
Yeah.
raise it back up and value stack it.
But then what we do is transcribe it, and then we create this 1-page strategy document. And so it's really, and now we're starting to tag so people can know what areas of the business. But all people have to do is really look at that 1-page strategy document, see if it applies to them or not. Right? It has most of the steps there anyway, so they could just apply it. But watch the videos on the strategies that they're going to use. Where we're going with it, and I can't promise it's going to be next month because it's not going to be next month, but it will be this year. Eventually, there will be SOPs for everyone so that you could just hand the SOP to someone, right, to do for you. The next stage of evolution, which I'm hoping to do in 2021, I can't, now these are all, but this is where we're going, is to work out with outsourcing companies, have them outsource that SOP for us, give a result, make that company available for others so that they could that's a good strategy. I want to use that. Let's use the company to do that. And then what I'd like to do is when we're doing it, report back each month how that strategy is doing, right? Like, we're not there yet, right? Like, we have to get a lot more people into steal our winners so that we
Yep.
can like use that revenue to do those things. But that's where we're going with it. And the cool thing that it really excites me is just how many of our subscribers have gotten like insane results already. And like what and seeing so many people upgrade like 10 lifetime or annual like so quickly, like once they're in, which is really kind of uh affirming on a very I guess personal level that like, okay, cool.
Yep.
Not because like we got some cool tactic getting people to upgrade, but people are like, damn, this is really good. I might as well just sign up for life or sign up for a year. Just is very reaffirming, and I dig it.
Yeah, I mean, it validates the entire concept, right? It's like, hey,
Right.
if I got so much value from 1 month that I'm willing to say, what does it cost to do a lifetime deal? Like, that says about all you need to know about the value of each individual program within that month, right? So
Right.
so I'm sure people that are like watching right now are like, this has got to be like insanely expensive. And I know the what you're charging now is just an insane deal for like these
Mhm.
mini masterminds with the best people in the
Right.
world. So and I know we're going to include the link and all kinds of stuff, more
Right.
information. People check it out. But what's the deal for people that are listening right now to get started?
It's 49 bucks a month, and there's no long-term, commitment there. If people want to subscribe for the year, it's I think 300 bucks for the year. So it's half the price. And if they want to subscribe for lifetime, it's $1,000. And so if, it doesn't really make sense to do it monthly except to taste it and see if it's as good as, you like, because within 2 years, you've already paid more than lifetime. And we plan on this really being the centerpiece of our business for a very long time. For us, like as a marketer, we consider it to be the ideal front end. So as long as Strategic Profits is in business, which has been in business now for like 20 years, this will be our flagship front end product. And Max, you're also a contributor, so there are different kinds of deals that we will always make for you to make for your like closest people on your list and stuff, because that's what we do.
But I mean, yeah. But all I got to say is like,
Yeah.
you can go out there. There's individual courses that cost more than $1,000, and I know you got to run in a minute, but
Right.
I'll just say this: like, each one of the individuals every month, the 8 to 12 people that contribute, probably all have courses that they charge $1,000 to $2,000, $3,000 for. So
Most of them have masterminds that
most
they
of the
charge
masterminds are 20,
25,000
30,
and up.
50,
Yeah.
50,000. So like the fact that for $1,000 they get lifetime access to the contributions, like the greatest, most distilled, valuable strategies from the top names in marketing. When you go to, I'll put the link in here so you can go check out every
Right.
big name that's been in it, every big name coming up on it. It's a who's who. It's all the top people in the world. Like it's not hyperbole when I say like it's the most obvious deal for anybody that's serious about growing their business. Like it's a better deal than stuff that we sell. Like I'm gonna put it right there. Like if you're thinking of buying like paid traffic training for the year or Steal Our Winners, go do Steal Our Winners. It's way more for what they're charging. I can't beat that. So we'll just you won that deal. So our customers don't buy from me. Go buy Rich's stuff. I know you got to run, man. I know we had to shrink this down because of my baby schedule life, but I always have fun chatting with you. It's always like a highlight of my week or month. Like I said, I'm serious. We need to we'll just start the
Well,
Rich and Max show.
yeah, let's have me back as your next guest, and then let's go much deeper into big tech and like current events. How about that?
That sounds great, man. Well,
All right,
enjoy the
cool.
rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend. We'll talk soon. I'll see everyone on the next show. Thanks, guys.